Meghan Markle's failed plan to bag a billionaire as her marriage to Prince Harry becomes more unhappy by the day.
Meghan Markle, who turned leaving the royal family into a media empire and commanded global attention with Oprah, was stopped at Dubai's border. Not waved through diplomatically or escorted to VIP. Stopped, questioned, and reportedly told she wasn't welcome. Dubai, a city that doesn't tolerate chaos, said no. And that refusal is now sending shockwaves through Meghan's shrinking sphere of influence. This goes deeper than a travel ban. It's a brand collapsing in real time, a marriage reportedly under pressure, and a palace, the institution she left, quietly relieved. The world's most famous royal rebel may have finally run out of road. And we have to ask you right now, before we go any further, did you ever think it would end up like this? Drop your answer in the comments. We're reading every single one. The plan that fell apart before it began. To understand just how catastrophic the Dubai situation is for Meghan Markle, you need to understand what Dubai was supposed to represent. This was not just a trip. This was not a vacation, not a speaking engagement, not a wellness retreat. According to multiple sources familiar with her inner circle's discussions, Dubai was supposed to be Act 2. After months of relentlessly negative headlines back in the United States and the United Kingdom, after the Spotify deal crumbled, after the Netflix partnership reportedly went cold, after the Archewell Foundation began struggling to attract the kind of high-profile donations it once commanded, Meghan's team was apparently searching for a reset, a new stage, a place where the narrative could be controlled again. Dubai made a certain kind of sense on paper. It is a city that has reinvented itself spectacularly on the world stage. It welcomes celebrity. It rewards ambition. It has a long history of embracing global figures who come with prestige, with wealth, with the promise of prestige by association. Meghan allegedly believed that her title, even an unofficial one, even a stripped-down version of what she once carried, would grease the wheels. That her global fame would be currency enough. She arrived dressed for a triumphant entrance. Sources describe her as appearing polished, prepared, projecting confidence. This was supposed to be a moment, a red carpet moment in a country that practically invented the concept of the grand arrival. But the red carpet never came. Instead, what allegedly came was a tap on the shoulder from an immigration official, a quiet, professional redirection to a private room. No fanfare, no cameras, no warm welcome. Just a closed door and a conversation that, by all accounts, did not go the way Meghan expected. Now here's the question that every single person watching this needs to sit with. What does it say about where things stand when a government with no skin in the game, no centuries-old feud, no personal grievance, looks at your file and decides you're too much of a risk? Think about that, because that's what allegedly happened in Dubai. Why Dubai said no, and what that really means. Let us be absolutely clear about something. Dubai is not a country that makes decisions like this lightly, emotionally, or impulsively. The United Arab Emirates operates with a level of strategic calculation that is frankly extraordinary. Every decision made at its borders, every entry permitted, every entry denied, is the product of careful intelligence, careful diplomacy, and an almost obsessive protection of national reputation. So when Dubai allegedly pulled Meghan Markle aside and informed her that her entry had been flagged, that was not a bureaucratic accident. That was not a computer glitch. That was a message. And the message was unmistakable. In Middle Eastern diplomatic culture, honor and reputation are not abstract concepts. They are not buzzwords. They are the actual currency of power. A country like Dubai, which has spent decades carefully curating its global image as a haven of luxury, of order, of trustworthy business dealings, cannot afford to be seen hosting someone whose global image is currently being defined by the words manipulator, bully, and chronic victim. Those are not words we are choosing. Those are the words that have been appearing in headlines for months, echoed by former employees, former allies, former royal insiders. And apparently, those headlines traveled further than Meghan's team anticipated. According to sources, reports of Meghan's behavior, particularly the accounts from former aides who filed official complaints during her time as a working royal in the United Kingdom, have quietly circulated in international diplomatic advisory circles. Stories of staff reduced to tears, of sudden firings with little warning, of an atmosphere of tension and fear that reportedly clung to her household like a shadow. In a country that prizes order and discretion above almost everything else, those stories were heard. And they were remembered. Dubai, it seems, was not prepared to risk inviting that particular energy within its borders. But here's the layer that makes this genuinely explosive. And we need you to really engage with this. It wasn't just the staff allegations. It wasn't just the bad press. According to diplomatic observers, Meghan's attempt to relocate, to use Dubai as a potential new base, came at a moment when she is reportedly facing ongoing federal scrutiny in the United States. When reports of financial irregularities connected to the Montecito lifestyle were beginning to quietly surface, when questions about the Archewell Foundation's use of funds were reportedly being asked by people with actual authority to ask them. No government in the world, not even the most welcoming, not even the most celebrity-hungry, wants to look like they are providing sanctuary to someone under investigation. Not when that investigation is federal. Not when the optics of sheltering that person could draw international attention and international scrutiny directly onto them. Dubai, by all accounts, looked at the full picture, the reputation, the legal questions, the behavioral history, and made a clean, cold, calculated decision. This is not someone we want within our borders right now. And with that decision, an entire chapter of Meghan's post-royal reinvention strategy reportedly collapsed in a single afternoon. The moment itself, what witnesses allegedly saw. We want to take you into the room now, as close as the available accounts will allow us to get, because what allegedly happened in that private immigration space tells you everything you need to know about where Meghan Markle's head is right now. And it is not a pretty picture. Sources say the conversation behind closed doors was brief. The officials were reportedly professional, measured, and completely unmoved by anything Meghan said or implied. There was no negotiation. There was no exception made. The decision had apparently already been made before she ever stepped off the plane, and no amount of charm, no invoking of titles or connections or global fame was going to change it. When Meghan emerged from that room, according to one account from a witness present in the broader terminal area, the transformation was immediate and unmistakable. Gone was the polished, confident projection of the arrival. In its place, a woman visibly shaking with rage. Eyes cold and hard. Lips pressed together so tightly they had lost their color. Walking fast, not the elegant, purposeful stride of someone comfortable in the spotlight, but the brittle, controlled movement of someone desperately trying to hold themselves together in public. She reportedly refused to speak to anyone. No comments to the small team reportedly traveling with her. No phone calls. No visible attempt to spin what had just happened or explain it away. Just silence. And a very fast exit from a country that had made its feelings unmistakably plain. Now we want to ask you this, and we really want your honest take in the comments. Have you ever seen someone who genuinely believed they were above consequences suddenly have to face one they couldn't talk their way out of? Because that, by all accounts, is what this looked like. A person colliding with a reality they had convinced themselves they'd never have to face. A border that didn't care about tabloid coverage, A government that wasn't susceptible to PR framing. Just a file, a flag, and a firmly closed door. The Saudi gambit, and why it's already failing. Here's where things get even more complicated, and frankly, even more revealing about the desperate nature of the situation Meghan now finds herself in. According to insiders with knowledge of ongoing behind-the-scenes negotiations, Dubai was never the only play. Simultaneously, and apparently with considerable effort, Meghan's team has reportedly been in quiet talks with Saudi officials. The apparent goal: to negotiate some form of arrangement, potentially framed as a pseudo-diplomatic residency, that would allow Meghan to establish a base in Saudi Arabia. Think about what that means for a moment. This is a woman who, not so many years ago, gave an interview heard around the world in which she spoke passionately about her values, her beliefs, and the principles she was willing to walk away from the royal family to protect. And now, according to these reports, she is reportedly exploring residency options in a country that has faced enormous international scrutiny over its human rights record, its treatment of women, and its attitude toward the kind of progressive values Meghan has publicly built her brand on. The cognitive dissonance of that, the sheer distance between the public persona and the reported private reality, is something that has not gone unnoticed, not by international observers, not by the diplomatic circles in which these discussions are apparently taking place, and not, critically, by Saudi leadership itself. Multiple sources indicate that Saudi officials are proceeding with extreme caution. The risk calculus for them is straightforward. Meghan Markle arrives trailing too much baggage, too many scandals, too many ongoing controversies. No matter how carefully she attempts to frame her story, as a victim of British racism, as a reformer, as a humanitarian, the weight of accumulated negative coverage is simply too heavy for a country that is actively trying to improve its own international image to absorb. The Saudi Vision 2030 project, the enormous effort to reposition the country as a modernizing, diversifying economic powerhouse, that project does not benefit from being associated with someone who generates the kind of chaotic, divisive media coverage that follows Meghan wherever she goes. The risk of reputational damage, sources say, is simply too high. So here is the question the entire world is quietly asking right now, and it is a question with no comfortable answer. If Dubai said no, and if Saudi Arabia appears to be leaning the same way, where does Meghan Markle actually go from here? Because the options, which once seemed almost limitless, are narrowing with frightening speed. The Montecito collapse, the empire that wasn't. To truly understand the desperation behind the Dubai gambit, you have to understand what was happening simultaneously back in California. Because while Meghan was allegedly attempting to negotiate new international arrangements, the foundation of the life she had built in Montecito was reportedly cracking at its base. The reports are stark. According to multiple sources, Meghan and Harry did not leave their Montecito estate voluntarily. They were not downsizing. They were not choosing a new chapter. They were, according to these accounts, forced out. The word that keeps appearing in the reporting is not sold or relocated. The word is kicked out. And the reason given: late rent payments, unresolved financial disputes with the property manager. A situation that reportedly deteriorated past the point of recovery. Paints a picture that is almost impossible to reconcile with the image the couple spent years carefully constructing. Remember the $100 million dream? Remember the breathless announcements? The Spotify deal that was going to reimagine podcasting? The Netflix partnership that was going to give them creative freedom and financial security in a single swoop? The Archewell Foundation that was going to reshape humanitarian philanthropy? The image of a couple walking away from royal constraints into a golden future of their own making. Here is where that image stands today. The Spotify deal collapsed entirely. The Netflix relationship reportedly grew cold after the documentary content underperformed expectations. Archewell donations have slowed to what sources describe as a crawl, and the couple is no longer living in the home that was supposed to be the physical emblem of their post-royal success. The $100 million dream has an extremely different face now, and the contrast between what was promised and what is reportedly being lived is so stark that even former supporters are struggling to explain it away. We want to ask you something that we think cuts right to the heart of this. At what point does a narrative of victimhood stop being a shield and start being a prison? Because Meghan built her brand around the story of what was done to her, around the injustices she faced, the racism she experienced, the institution that failed her. And that story, powerfully and skillfully told, opened enormous doors. But what happens when the doors you need opened aren't interested in that story? What happens when the world moves on, and the story that once generated sympathy starts generating skepticism instead? That, we would argue, is exactly the crisis Meghan Markle is currently navigating, and she does not appear to be navigating it well. Harry's silence and what it's reportedly hiding. Now we need to talk about the man who has been conspicuously absent from most of the coverage of the Dubai debacle. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. The man who gave up his family, his country, his military career, his birthright, and followed a woman to California because he believed in what they were building together. According to sources close to people within the couple's shrinking inner circle, Harry did not know about Meghan's attempt to enter Dubai until after it had already gone catastrophically wrong. That her decision to make the trip, to attempt this particular international move, was allegedly a solo decision. One she made without fully consulting him. One that, when it collapsed into the embarrassment it became, reportedly landed on both of them. If that account is accurate, it reveals something profound and deeply troubling about the current state of what was once sold to the world as the great love story of our era. A marriage in which one partner makes major unilateral decisions. Decisions with enormous personal and reputational consequences. Without the full knowledge or consent of the other is not a marriage that is functioning well. It is a marriage that is under strain. And the strain reportedly goes further than the Dubai trip. Two separate sources have told insiders that the couple has been fighting with increasing frequency and that the fights are mostly about money, about the gap between what they're spending and what is coming in, about decisions that have been made that can't be unmade, about a future that is looking considerably less secure than it did when they were signing nine-figure deals. One source went further than most, and again, this is reported and unconfirmed, suggesting that the couple now regularly sleeps in separate rooms, that the intimacy and unity they projected so powerfully in those early California years has given way to something colder, more formal, more carefully managed. And what of Harry's relationship with the institution he left? Because here, the picture being painted by insiders is perhaps the most poignant of all. According to multiple sources, Harry has reportedly been quietly reaching out. Not publicly, not through lawyers, not through the media, but privately, personally, trying to reconnect with palace officials, trying to find a path back, trying to understand whether a return to some form of royal life, or at minimum a restoration of family relationships, is still possible. The response, reportedly, has been ice cold. William, according to sources, is still not answering. The relationship between the brothers, once so close, so genuinely affectionate, remains frozen at a temperature that does not appear to be warming. And King Charles, according to some accounts, has shut the door completely. Not with anger, not with drama, simply with the quiet, final certainty of a man who has made his peace with an irreversible situation. Harry, it is said, is realizing something terrible: that he burned bridges he cannot rebuild, that forgiveness from the monarchy, if it ever comes, will be on their timeline, not his, that the life he walked away from is not waiting for him to return. The palace response: silence as celebration. Let us now turn our attention to Buckingham Palace and the wider royal family, because their response to the Dubai situation has been, in its own way, one of the most eloquent things they have said in years. Their response has been nothing. Complete, composed, unbroken silence. And in the context of the British royal family, silence is not absence. Silence is communication. When the palace chooses not to respond to a news story, it is choosing not to dignify it with engagement. When the palace remains composed while chaos swirls around a former member, it is demonstrating, quietly, deliberately, that the chaos is no longer its problem. Sources within royal circles, speaking carefully and with obvious awareness of the sensitivity of their position, have described the mood within the institution as something that could only be described as quiet vindication. Not cruelty, not triumph, not the unseemly satisfaction of watching someone fall. Something more measured and in many ways more devastating than any of those things. The quiet vindication of people who said, for years, that this was how things would end. Who warned, in careful and diplomatic language, that the course being set would lead somewhere like this. Who watched as those warnings were dismissed, weaponized in the media, turned into evidence of the very institutional racism and cruelty being alleged. And now those same people, those careful, quiet, protocol-observing members of an institution that was declared obsolete, racist, and irrelevant by the couple who left it, are watching from behind palace walls as one of those same people is denied entry to a country that doesn't even have a dog in the fight. This is not something that will be spoken aloud. It will not be said at a press conference or acknowledged in an official statement. The palace does not operate that way, but insiders say the Dubai news has moved through the institution like a quiet current, noticed and registered by everyone, commented upon by almost no one. Because there is nothing left to say, the situation is speaking for itself. The staff stories that refuse to die. One of the most significant factors in the Dubai decision, and one that does not get nearly enough attention in mainstream coverage, is the extraordinary persistence of the allegations made by former members of Meghan's staff. These are not new stories. They are not recent fabrications. They have been consistent, documented, and stubbornly resistant to all attempts to dismiss them. The formal complaints made by former aides during the couple's time as working royals in the United Kingdom, complaints serious enough that an official HR investigation was reportedly initiated by the palace, have never been retracted. The people who made those complaints have not walked them back. They have maintained their accounts through enormous pressure, through public ridicule, through a media landscape that was, for a period, almost entirely unsympathetic to them. And then, after Harry and Meghan relocated to the United States, something interesting began to happen. American staff members, people with no connection to the British palace, no cultural loyalty to the monarchy, no reason to participate in what Meghan's supporters characterized as an institutional smear campaign, began to tell similar stories. An atmosphere of tension, sudden, unexplained changes in direction, behavior described as emotionally volatile. One former employee reportedly quit after just 6 weeks, citing what she described as emotional whiplash and manipulative hostility. In the West, in a media landscape that has become highly sophisticated at narrative management, those stories can be spun, contextualized, attributed to culture clash or the pressures of high-profile work. Legal teams can be deployed. Sympathetic publications can be briefed. The narrative can be managed. But in Dubai, in a diplomatic culture, a reputation is assessed with the same rigor and care that a financial institution applies to a credit rating, Those stories become data points. They are placed alongside the public headlines, the financial questions, the legal scrutiny, and they form a picture. And the picture that emerges, according to diplomatic observers, was not one that inspired confidence. The conclusion that a country like Dubai apparently reached was not complicated. This is someone who generates friction wherever she goes, who has a documented history of conflict with the people who work most closely with her, who's currently under scrutiny by federal authorities in her home country, who's navigating an empire that appears to be in the process of collapsing. None of those factors individually would necessarily trigger a ban. But together? Together, they built a case that was apparently compelling enough to justify what happened at that border. The optics disaster and the impossible spin. We want to spend a few moments on something that the PR world is apparently still in shock about: the complete and utter impossibility of spinning what happened in Dubai into anything other than what it was. Meghan Markle's team has, over the years, demonstrated a considerable capacity for narrative management. They are skilled operators in the media landscape. They understand the power of a well-timed exclusive, a carefully framed statement, a strategically placed sympathetic piece in a friendly publication. They have been doing this for years, and doing it with a level of sophistication that even their critics have been forced to acknowledge. But there's no spin available for being stopped at an immigration counter and denied entry to a country. None. The image is too concrete, too specific, too viscerally easy to understand. Everyone who has ever passed through customs knows exactly what it means when you are separated from the line and taken to a private room. Everyone who has ever traveled internationally knows the particular humiliation of that experience and can immediately imagine how it would feel to go through it when you are one of the most photographed, most scrutinized women on the planet. Meghan's team has remained completely silent on the Dubai situation. No statement, no denial, no alternative explanation offered. And that silence, in the context of a team that is usually anything but silent when negative stories appear, is itself a data point. It suggests that the people around her have looked at the situation and concluded correctly that anything they say will make things worse. Social media, predictably, has filled the vacuum with the kind of energy that can end careers. Twitter threads analyzing every detail of the reported events have gone viral. Reddit communities have spent days reconstructing timelines, analyzing sources, debating what the decision means for Meghan's future. PR professionals, some of the most experienced in the industry, have been publicly and openly questioning whether there is any strategy left available that could reverse the trajectory of what is currently a very public freefall. The answer, from everything we can see, appears to be not really, not right now, not with the current accumulation of negative stories, the financial questions, the legal scrutiny, and the Dubai debacle stacked on top of each other. The wall has become too high to scale with the tools currently available. Something would need to fundamentally change, and there is no obvious indication of what that change might look like or where it might come from. Where do they go from here? The question with no good answers. Let us bring all of this to its conclusion. And it is not a comfortable one, no matter where your sympathies lie in this story. Meghan Markle built a brand on the premise that she was a woman unfairly constrained by an ancient, racist institution, that she had the courage to walk away from that institution in pursuit of something more authentic, and that the world would reward that courage with the kind of success and freedom that the palace had denied her. For a time, a significant, lucrative, high-profile time, that premise appeared to be working. But brands are fragile things. They require constant maintenance, constant reinvention, constant feeding. And when the narrative that sustains the brand begins to buckle under the weight of contradictory evidence, when the victim of the establishment story collides with reports of the same person allegedly mistreating their own employees, when the humanitarian brand is questioned by the financial practices of the foundation it supports. When the freedom seeker ends up being turned away at the border of the very kind of cosmopolitan international world she said she was choosing over the monarchy, the brand doesn't just weaken, it begins to collapse. And here is the terrible irony at the heart of this entire story. The institution Meghan walked away from, the one she characterized as broken and harmful and irredeemably damaged, that institution is, by every visible metric, still standing, still functioning, still commanding the kind of global attention and respect that Meghan's post-royal empire was supposed to challenge and eventually eclipse. Meanwhile, according to the reports we have been examining today, the Montecito home is gone. The Spotify deal is gone. The Netflix warmth is reportedly cooling. The foundation is reportedly struggling. The Saudi talks are reportedly stalling. And Dubai, the city built on the audacious belief that anything is possible if you have the right resources and the right reputation, reportedly looked at Meghan Markle and saw neither. For Harry, the picture is equally bleak, and perhaps more heartbreaking because his situation is one of a man who made an irreversible decision and is now beginning, perhaps, to fully understand what he gave up. The family that reportedly won't take his calls. The brother who doesn't answer. The king who has apparently closed the door. And a wife whose decisions are reportedly happening without his full knowledge and whose trajectory is making the path back even harder to find. There are whispers, and we want to be clear that these are whispers, sourced but unconfirmed, that the couple is less aligned now than they have ever been, that he wants structure and she wants escape, that the fairy tale that the world watched them build has, behind the closed doors of wherever they are currently living, become something considerably more complicated and considerably less fairy tale-like. Is there a path forward? For Meghan, always. Redemption narratives are powerful things, and the media landscape that has turned on her could, under the right circumstances, turn back. But right now, in this moment, with this accumulation of setbacks and scrutiny and slammed doors, the path is not visible. It is not clearly marked, and the person who would need to walk it does not, by any available account, currently have the resources, financial, reputational, relational, that such a journey would require. The image that will linger from this chapter, the image that has already, as one source put it, burned itself into the public consciousness, is not a red carpet arrival. It is not a power suit moment or a headline-grabbing interview. It is a private room in a Dubai airport. A brief, cold conversation. And a woman walking out of it fast, eyes hard, refusing to speak, heading for an exit in a country that did not want her there. That image will be very hard to replace. And right now, nobody in Meghan's camp appears to know what they would replace it with. We have covered a lot of ground today, and we want to hear from you on every single level of it. Do you think the Dubai ban was justified? Do you believe the staff allegations that appear to have played a role in the decision? Do you think Harry and Meghan's marriage can survive the pressure that is now bearing down on it from every direction? And perhaps most importantly, do you see any way back for Meghan Markle? Or have too many bridges been burned, too many doors closed, too many opportunities squandered for a genuine comeback to be possible? The comment section is open. We genuinely want to know what you think, because this story is not over, and your perspective matters. Hit the like button if this video gave you something to think about. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next chapter breaks. And based on everything we are seeing, the next chapter is coming very soon. Because when a story is moving this fast and the players involved are this prominent, things do not stay still for long. Stay with us. We will not miss a beat.